In this video, I wanted to talk about guilt and creativity. As I talked about in another video about the universal pain index, it is easy to be overwhelmed when we consider the volume of bad shit happening in the universe, on Earth, within our families and ourselves. And it can be paralyzing. So, I talked about trying to have some level of detachment from that knowledge, not to, ignore it or, be blind to it, but just to put it in its proper lens or viewpoint place, right? It's one of the lenses to look through. Another thing that I think paralyzes, certain types of people or, contributes to their suffering is when they are a creative person and they basically, I call it they mourn their supplies, okay? So let's say you are a watercolor artist and you use a specific brand of paint, and you know that to create this paint, there is pigments that have to be mined, there is waste that is produced, and then there is the inefficiency of the distribution of the paint on the brush, on the painting, what gets lost when you wash it. And I know this sounds severe, this particular case, but there's, I think, degrees and a spectrum of this concern depending upon how much of the other stuff in the universal pain index you're focusing on. So for me, there is the problem of plastics in the environment, right? The ocean patch and all that. That environmental aspect of the universal pain index, if we're looking at like a universal waste index or pollutant index, if you will, is so mind-numbingly large that it's easy for us to personalize how we're contributing to it. And yes, we're all contributing to it in some way. However, this is unavoidable. Humans are a specific type of organism in which other animals go out into the environment, they seek a thing like, let's say, a mango, right? They take the mango off the tree, they eat it, they throw it on the ground, the skin and the seeds, and it creates a cycle, right? We're outside of this cycle because for us to get the mango, we got to pay someone to pick it that isn't even consuming it. We have to package it within a certain window, in a certain way, for a certain destination. When it arrives, it needs to be processed using energy and time. It needs to be stored. Usually, a lot of vegetables need air conditioning in a cooler. Then we consume it, and we don't throw the seed in the ground where it could sprout and compost. We put it in a dump where it is encased in a plastic bag, right? So our consumption, our cycles of renewal are never completed. They are artificially, halted at the waste level. Well, what I'm saying is that I know if you're listening to this and you're a creative, that you worry about this stuff, probably. I'm telling you to not worry about it. I'm telling you to not feel shame about using your supplies, any supplies, as a personal individual. I'm not telling you to waste things, okay? I'm not telling you to not consider where this stuff is going or where it came from. I'm saying the guilt that you feel over doing these activities or using these supplies is, I think, unwarranted because you are part of a system in which you cannot escape. So theoretically, yes, you could go live, they call it cottage core or the cottage life, right? And I wanted to do this a long time ago. Everything is renewable, everything is compostable, no plastics and all this stuff. But 99.99% of us will never do this because we won't do it as an individual, motivation or resources, or we have to live in a city to do what we do. It's just the reality of how we're living. I used to take the labels off of cans and all this, really extreme, like recycling-esque things because I'm like, I don't want one molecule of this going to the dump, right? This was a long time ago. But so what I'm saying is create. Use the resources. Do not mourn materials. It's more important for you to create something that could inspire someone else or yourself than it is to stress and be sad over what's going on with, the incoming and outgoing of the supply chain, okay? And you can do creative things. You can use, I use like old applesauce containers for paint palettes. And I'll flip them over sometimes and use the depression on the bottom. And I'll cover them with, like saran wrap if there's liquid paint still. I hate the way acrylic paint is dispensed. It should be in syringes. Some form of not having to squeeze a bottle, because that is such wasteful bullshit. I've wasted so much acrylic paint that way. I mean, I've tried to only put out a little bit and yada yada, but think about the billions, or don't think about the billions of gallons of paint and other stuff that's wasted every day. It's ridiculous. But anyways, what I'm saying is be free, okay? Create. Do not mourn materials. Use the materials within it, whatever parameters you can, recycle, reuse, upcycle, do all those things, but don't get rid of the guilt. The guilt and shame is ballast that needs to be thrown out because you have no choice. Just existing, you're going to use up these resources, right? You just use them in different ways. But to not create, that's your choice. And to feel the guilt and the shame and stuff, I mean, part of that is, is something you can control. Some of it is very entrenched. I mean, I still feel a lot of it. But I keep going. I keep creating. And the point is that we can manage it. We can try to manage it and still create stuff. Because the human part of that act of producing beauty and seeing beauty and wondering about beauty is really going to be one of the things that helps us through any troubled times, and helps us celebrate and connects us as a species and interspecies, once we start communicating with other animals in a intelligible way, they may tell us what they think is beautiful. We're trying to communicate with sperm whales with AI. What if they tell us that certain shape of a boat is beautiful to them, right? Or crows and ravens. What if they tell us, a specific type of shiny object is more preferable, or they don't like, let's say, mirrors, or they don't like a specific color because it represents something threatening to them. We don't know what the future aesthetics of any being is going to reveal. So just get out there, create, try to reduce or minimize the shame and guilt, and just do your best to, reuse, recycle, upcycle, and all that stuff. And I would love to see your results. Okay, bye-bye.